Hello, everyone. My name is Jakira Williams. I am the Youth Ambassador with the Community Enrichment Project, CEP for short, and I'm excited to be your host for today's International Youth Day Dialogue. I would also like to welcome my co hosts, our panelists, and our live stream audience for joining us for this occasion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Austin Ekujuru, and I'm an ambassador for United Network for Peace and Diplomacy (UNYPD). So it's my pleasure to co-host this dialogue on the future of food with Jakira Williams. I welcome all our panelists and our audience to this year's event in commemoration of the International Youth Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin, for that introduction. Today's dialogue is hosted by the Community Enrichment Project and UNYPD, and is to inform the groundbreaking UN Summit on the future of food. This panel was convened to bring together young food heroes devoted to developing ideas on how to make food systems safer, stronger, and more sustainable. As food systems around the world continue to recover from the shock of the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to host food system dialogues as a prelude to the first ever UN Food Systems Summit, which is scheduled to take place in New York this upcoming September. The panelists that I have before me are making progressive strides in their communities while also simultaneously building sustainable solutions from the ground up. Young leaders of the world are streamrolling sustainable and environmental initiatives and providing solutions for current food insecurities plaguing communities all around the world. It is not only an honor, but a privilege to be here with all of you today. This dialogue will not only be a lively and constructive discussion on how to make food systems safer, stronger, and more equitable, but also to provide a diverse array of perspectives from around the world. So without further ado, let's get to know our panel. If you all will go around, introduce yourselves, and share what you brought here today to the International Youth Day panel. So, Takaya, would you like to start?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Takaya Lee. I am from the Youth Food Security Team located in Baltimore, Maryland. I will give a little perspective about what's in my community and what Baltimore looks like. So I can't wait to talk to you.
That's great. I'm looking forward to hearing everything that Baltimore has to offer and for you to drop some gems on us. Elise, would you like to continue? I believe you're muted.
Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Elise Pelletier. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I studied environmental science and food systems as well as chemistry. So I'm excited to bring a little bit of background about my food systems in Michigan and throughout the United States, sort of from a agriculture and sustainability perspective.
I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective. It sounds very interesting. Faith, would you like to go next?
Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Faith Ayegba. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm an advocate for food safety, food security here in my country. And so basically, I would look forward to conversing with everybody so we share experiences of what has happened so far and where we are right now in our food systems in the country. Great to be here.
I look forward to hearing what's going on in Nigeria and to hear your perspective. Fisayo, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Fisayo Arosiola Fakayode. I'm a human rights lawyer. Great to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation and also sharing my input from a human rights-based perspective on the right to food. Thank you for having me.
Of course, no problem. I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective as well. And Vita, would you like to go?
Hi, I'm 15 years old. I'm from Singapore, and I'm part of a newly established youth organization called Youth for Food. We look forward to working with you guys.
We look forward to working with you. Anna, would you like to conclude us?
Yes. Hi, my name is Autumn Macklin. I'm from an organization house in Baltimore, Maryland. And today I will just bring a little bit of insight about our food systems in Baltimore and just to hear my perspective on some other topics.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to everything you all are going to bring to this discussion. I think it's going to be a great conversation. So, as I mentioned, today we have a great panel of young activists here with us, and I can't wait to hear all of your thoughts and topics on today's issue of the Youth Day Dialogue. So, before we begin, I would like to give a bit of background on the information on today's Transforming Food Systems, Youth Innovation for Human and Planetary Health. So in 2019, the UN Secretary General called for a food system summit and engagement process to unleash the power of food and to deliver progress on all 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Our food systems touch every aspect of human existence. The health of our food systems affects the health of our bodies, as well as health of our environment and our economies and our cultures. When they function well, food systems have the power to bring together families, communities, and nations. When our food systems fail, the resulting disorder threatens our education, health, and economy, as well as human rights, peace, and security. So, to jumpstart our conversation, I would like to share a brief video created by the United Nations in preparation for the September 2021 Food System Summit.
Food is more than just what we eat. The ways in which we produce, process, and food touches every aspect of life on this planet. It is the foundation of our cultures, our economies, and our relationship with the natural world, and has the power to bring us together as families, communities, and nations.
Families and children are on the brink of famine.
But today's food systems are fragile and unequal. When they fail, there are ripple effects around the world, and the pandemic has impacted the most vulnerable among us. But we know what we need to do to get back on track. We have an opportunity to build back stronger than ever. Transforming our food systems is possible and necessary, and we can set a course to make real change for the benefit of all people. By bringing together key players from around the world and giving voice to citizens in every country. Because a strong food system means
no matter your race, no matter your class, no matter where you live,
women and men have equal opportunities to produce and access nutritious food,
which promotes human health at every step
without degrading land and water resources.
Significa una agricultura familiar,
provide us, the community, with stability
all year round, every month, every day of the week,
even during a pandemic.
We are all connected, and we all have a responsibility to act. We must be bold. We must think and act differently. Transforming our food systems is the most powerful action we can take to solve our biggest problems, because together
we can build a just and resilient world.
A just and resilient world
where no one is left behind.
Where no one is left behind.
Where no one is left behind.
Where no one is left behind. Join us today.
So, as the video described, food is more than what we consume. It's the foundation of our culture and our economies. Our food systems are failing, but there is hope to make things better. With that being said, panelists, what is a simple way to define a food system? In what ways can we encourage youth and our community members to view food as more than a material object, but as an integral part of our food systems? And Takia, would you mind starting? Takaya, excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so a simple way to define a food system is thinking of it from farm to table. So this comes to think about how it was grown, harvested, processed, packaged, transported, and consumed. I believe that the best way to encourage youth and other community members to understand food as a part of a food system is allowing them to be a part of it to begin with. Whether that's growing the food, cooking it, seeing how it's packaged, and also understanding where their food comes from.
I agree. I think it's integral that we inform the youth on where their food comes from, because I think they don't make that connection when they're young, because, you know, they're just like, I want to eat. But I think it's great that you mentioned it from the farm to the plate and letting them know the steps it takes to get there. So I like that. Anita, would you like to continue? And Vita?
Yeah, so I believe many of us actually, have food on a plate 3 times a day for almost 365 days. I'm sorry. But not all of us, especially I'm 15, I don't know how to cook. I don't really appreciate the effort that goes into cooking or even growing foods and crops. I believe that one way the youth can appreciate food and food systems can be like connecting with the way food is made as well as grown, and not just appreciating like what we get to eat, because a lot goes behind just the food that comes on our table.
Definitely agree. I definitely agree. Elise?
I think one way to achieve sort of what we've been talking about of getting young people more involved and more knowledgeable about their food systems would be, sort of advocating for teaching it in parallel in schools with STEM topics like environmental science, chemistry, and things of that nature, because they really do go hand in hand. I do think that there is some hope for doing this in the future, because I guess it's almost 5 years ago when I was in high school, during my senior year, there was one day for like 10 minutes where we actually talked about environmental justice, which is like a really not well talked about topic in public school systems. And we only talked about it for like 10 minutes because it was on a page in our textbook. But I think that kind of brings out like a sense of hope that we can potentially continue to teach that in our schools in the future.
I agree. And I think incorporating the food systems and the idea of teaching youth about food systems in their curriculum is essential to making sure that we're informing the youth on the best ways to take care of the environment and these food systems. So I agree. I think that's really cool. Autumn?
I believe that a simple way to define a food system is basically the how and where we get our food from, whereas essentially the different connections we have worldwide or the animals or factories that we get the food from. I believe it revolves around the process of getting the food, whether it's transportation or basically adapting to the budget and cost of it. I believe when you hear food systems, you should think of like 3 to 4 words like processing, transport, consumption, and production. And I believe we can encourage the youth and community members to view food as more than something that exists and rather as something that's important and necessary by showing the positive impacts it has. Just like increasing our energy, helping the body function and grow. And I believe we could do this by providing more classes that you can learn about food and how you can maintain like a healthy diet.
I like that. Can you remind me again the 4 words that we should associate with food systems? You said processing, transport, and consumption. And what was the last one?
Production.
Production. I like that. That's cool. Faith?
Okay. All right. So for me, food system, it's the interactions basically, as the last speaker said, from the growing to the processing, the packaging, the transportation, even the marketing, right? And then as well, I also subscribe to the fact that it should, for inclusiveness for young persons, from an early age, that it should be included in the curriculum for school, for the teaching aspect of it. So it's not just, they just see food. Hey, I want food, but then they should know how how it's grown, the science behind it. And if we're discussing food system, there is no way we won't talk about agriculture, because food is not in isolation from how it is grown and processed and all.
I like your thinking with that. Food is definitely cohesive with agriculture. And I think that's a really good point to make. So, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, promote peace and prosperity across many different global issues. How are food systems connected to the UN SDGs? And we can just start with Takaya and then just go all around.
Okay, so the goal I decided to focus on was poverty, because poverty is such a big issue in Baltimore. So poverty affects all aspects of life, such as like housing, access to food, your health. So taking access to food as an example, a lot of neighborhoods in Baltimore have a lot of corner stores and markets. So this means lack of markets, my mistake. So this means that a lot of citizens in Baltimore don't get a lot of fresh foods and vegetables and stuff. So by providing more healthy food, resources, and fixing food systems will allow people to improve their access to food and health, and also achieve SDG's #1 goal, which focuses on poverty.
I like that. I like that. Messiah?
Right, thanks. I believe that the right to food is kind of linked to all other SDGs. So what I mean is, for instance, when you talk about the right to food, is recognized under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And you see that this right to food is not in, it's linked to other human rights, is indivisible to other human rights, and it's at the core, inherent core of the dignity of the human person. So we talk about, for instance, the right to health is linked to the right to food. When you talk about the right to education, so school feeding programs and the likes, you find out all those things are linked. When you talk about women's rights as well, it's all linked, it's interlinked, and you can't seem to divide it. And that's why human rights are interrelated, indivisible, and dependent on each other. And that's why you find out that a lot of countries that have signed up to this core human rights that talks about the right to food realizes that these rights are linked. So I believe that when people, women and children, everyone, a man, we all have right to food, adequate food that is culturally acceptable, that kind of fits into our dietary needs. You see that all other human rights like education in the SDG, health, peace and security would fare off better.
I think that's really cool how you made the connection between human rights and sustainability and the environmental issues. I think today we don't think about it as being interconnected, and I think that's where we have that disconnect with our youth and with people in government who aren't really connecting the two. But I think that's really powerful that you connected it, and I hopefully if everyone adapts that mentality, we can make better strides with food systems and being more sustainable in general. Autumn?
I believe that food systems are connected to the UN's SDG by having the same goals and common ground. They both stand for basically helping people and benefiting them. And like Kaya had mentioned, poverty is a major problem in Baltimore. Baltimore lacks a lot of resources, whether it's jobs, markets, healthy foods, or even transportation. Food systems connect with the UN SDG with dealing with poverty because they both want to defeat it. Fixing these food systems will lead to improvements in Baltimore, especially dealing with the healthy food intake, because that's not a major thing here. When the food systems are fixed, they can help increase the number of jobs, and this will lead to people struggling with less money problems and not having as many food excess.
I like that. I liked how you connected by caring about food systems can actually benefit the overall economy and communities of Baltimore and other areas in the city. So I like that. Next.
Yeah, I would like to bring up Sayo's point of interconnecting all the UN goals with food and hunger. So I would like to focus on goal number 3, which is good health. Obviously, food is like a source of nutrition, and coupled with exercise, it's really important for living life well. This relates to UN goal number 8, which is good jobs and economic growth, as well as sustainable cities and communities. So no matter what occupation you work in, you need to have good health, whether it's a desk job or you work in the fields, farming, and food plays a really, like, it builds the base for sustainable communities to make sure everyone's able to take part in activities and all. So I definitely agree with the point of interconnecting all of the UN goals and food.
It seems like connecting the UN goals with food systems is the way to go. I don't know why anyone else hasn't thought of this. Fasal, you're on to something, sis. Continue the good work. But Elise, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so in relation to Amita's point about, employment, I think agriculture can actually provide a lot of meaningful employment for people that are normally overlooked as being valuable workers in the workplace. For example, I visited an urban farm in Virginia last year where they were employing people with disabilities and providing meaningful opportunities for them to gain skills, whether it was in the greenhouses, at the farmers markets, or in their storefront, in their offices. And that ties to goal number 8, which is about, I think, decent work and economic growth. So there really are so many opportunities for so many different populations to benefit from employment in agriculture, as long as we provide equitable circumstances for those people to work.
I agree. Faith, you have anything to add?
Okay. And so for me, I would say food system is an interaction, yes, and between people and the natural world. You're talking about people and land, people and water, people and climate, and so it's basically cuts across all components of the SDG goals, or the UN SDG goals, as we would say. In terms of decent work, right to food, no poverty. So for any interaction that has to do with humans, with human beings, with people, they have to be food. They have to eat. They have to eat to live. They have to eat to be able to work. They have to eat to function in society, to function in life. So food system is critical and important to all aspects of the SDG goals.
Good. I agree. So, what would you all say is the state of food systems, including the presence or absence of food insecurity and challenges in your community or country?
Okay, I can jump in. So by being on a youth food security team here in Baltimore, I learned a lot about the food system in Baltimore. So I would say there is a poor state in Baltimore, just because a lot of communities are flooded with fast food restaurants and corner stores, like I said before, and there are not a lot of markets. And if there are like markets in the community, they're typically far away. So due to lack of transportation, they can't access these healthy foods. Other parts of Baltimore, other parts of Maryland, such as Baltimore County, doesn't face the same problems because they are more developed and don't really lack markets. So by providing more like food resources, such as using the Great Kids Farm or other local farms in Baltimore, we will be able to improve the food system here.
I like that. And I think it's very powerful that you mentioned the fact that in these urban communities, they don't put a lot of healthy grocery stores. It's like you said, it's more those convenience stores, those bodegas with more fast foods and processed foods, and not a lot of fruits and vegetables and like produce. So that's very powerful that you mentioned that.
Right, can I go?
Yes, you definitely can.
Okay, yeah. So I'm from Nigeria, and then one of the strong things that called to the right to food for me was during the pandemic last year. I mean, the pandemic is still on, but the lockdown, I mean. And when there was a national lockdown, you find out that people, the vulnerable, disadvantaged families, struggled with enjoying their right to food. And if you look at international human rights law, there is a minimum core obligation on countries to ensure, to prevent hunger. But this was not the case for the country. We seemed not to have been prepared to tackle the issue of hunger, lack of food, and food insecurity during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. And you see children who go to schools who no longer go to schools, who had access to school feeding programs in some cases. Poor families, daily wage earners struggled to enjoy their right to food. And the country didn't really do a lot to cushion this effect. While you see in the global north, some countries had facilities in place, like food vouchers for vulnerable families, like food banks people could access. This was not the case in Nigeria. So where palliative for the pandemic was kept, you find out it was being looted because people were hungry and they just needed to do just to get food. So they didn't really care what happened. I think the country failed in that regard to ensure that people had access to food during such a grave pandemic. And it brings to fore the issue around availability as well as accessibility of food. So is the food available for people in quality and quantity that caters to their dietary needs? I would say no, that was not the case for Nigeria. Talk about accessibility, both the physical as well as the financial accessibility. We failed in that regard. When you talk about dietary needs, so the food that was shared during the pandemic, the lockdown, and even now, do they cater for the physical, mental growth, and medical needs of people? I would say no in that regard as well. And when we talk about the food being free from adverse substances like toxins and the obligation of countries to ensure that people have safe food, I would say we are also struggling with that, though we have a national agency that caters for that, but much still needs to be done with this regard. And I think it's good young people are having this conversation to ensure that everyone's right to food, regardless of your status in the community, is guaranteed.
Yes, it sounds like Nigeria has little work to do when it comes to acknowledging their food systems, but with an advocate like you on their side, I feel like they'll be able to get it together in no time. Autumn, would you like to go?
Yes. By being a part of a team that is creating solutions for food insecurity in Baltimore City, I kind of have like a more in-depth understanding of what it is and how it plays a part in Baltimore. The state of food systems in the USA, I would say, is moderate, and Baltimore, like Takaya had mentioned, is weak. It is weak throughout the USA because some states and cities within those states are wealthy. However, you have some that are separate and kind of like in poverty more. I believe that like the main challenge of food insecurity in Baltimore is that the lack of resources, like I had once mentioned before. Citizens of Baltimore struggle to go to markets where they can get fresh produce, and they rather go to some stores that's nearby, like a fast food restaurant or even a corner store, because they, like Takai had mentioned, lack of transportation.
I agree. And it's that convenient aspect as well. When it's right down the street, why would you go a 20-minute bus ride compared to a 5-minute walk, And Rita?
Yeah, so I think food is widely available in Singapore, but one of the major issues is that Singapore is a really small land area, so only 1% of the area is devoted to food production. Therefore, like 90% of the food is imported from 170 countries over the world, which is the most imported food. So I think the pandemic hit Singapore quite hard because food import and shelves were pretty empty because food imports were hard to get. So I think locally grown produce in Singapore is a challenge. Another challenge I think is that before the pandemic, I definitely used to attend a lot of buffets, and we used to enjoy parties with a lot of food in it. So I think food wastage is definitely a problem in my household, at least. So I think that's something we can work on.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to definitely reel in the food waste, especially here. I also am a fan of buffets. I love a good bargain, get a lot of food for cheap, but in doing so, my eyes are bigger than my stomach and I end up wasting a lot of food. So I'm trying to be more conscious about that myself. So that was a good point. Austin, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to pose one of the questions, and I mean, I have to agree with all the interventions you have all made in this conversation. So they're very, very insightful. Thank you very much. So I want to ask, can you just tell us any idea you have to change the food system in your community or in your country? Akia, could you jump in on that?
Yes, Takai.
Did you get that?
Okay, yes. So one idea I have on the system is educating on the food system and getting them involved. A lot of people don't know a lot of information such as where the food is grown and processed and where it comes from. So by educating them on this, they'll be more aware and able to make better decisions about their food choices. Also by getting them more involved, such as harvesting and growing their own fruits and vegetables, they'll be able to provide financial support for their family.
Brilliant. Elisa, could you just jump in?
Yeah, sure. So I think a common misconception about like food insecurity is that it's entirely rooted in a lack of food in quantity. And that's not always true, especially in the United States, because I think it's about 30 to 40% of food goes to waste in the United States. So there are many other factors that contribute to food insecurity rather than just like absolute quantity. And one of those factors is the lack of access to culturally appropriate information about how to prepare food. So this farm that I mentioned earlier that I visited in Virginia, They were very strong advocates for addressing food insecurity in their community. And so they donated some of their fresh produce and other products to local organizations, but they didn't just donate the food. They didn't just donate it and walk away. They also implemented programs to teach people how to prepare the foods in ways that were delicious, healthy, and culturally appropriate for them. So having access to that information definitely gives people a sense of agency and taking control of their own health, when in a lot of times many of those populations, especially in that community in Virginia, were already agency deprived communities.
So access to information and empowering local communities is very key to sustainability of food system. So that's fantastic. So Faith?
So I would say, well, first of all, the COVID-19 happened and it had, COVID-19 happened for us. And I think that was like an eye opener to see the fact that, each country, every country, the global lockdown affected a lot of things beyond the economy. But we also,
hello,
can you hear me?
There?
Hello, can you hear me?
So Autumn, could you weigh in on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I was saying the lockdown, right, gave us that that the global lockdown made countries to realize, when there was lockdown, you couldn't do your importation, you couldn't do a lot of things were not accessible. And so for us here in Nigeria, one project my organization started doing, like a campaign to come to change the system, kind of, was also to include youth in participation for agri processes. So we started talking about home gardening, right? Why do we have to travel far to the market because we want our vegetables or our tomatoes or our carrots when it's something we can grow at the backyard? So we started like a kitchen garden campaign across across our community here. That was like an eye opener because of COVID. So probably thanks to COVID, we realized, I don't have to go to ShopRite or to travel far, since there was lockdown everywhere. And so I would encourage kitchen gardening or home gardening, as the case may be, for young persons to have, even in places like the lady from Singapore that complains of access, availability of land space. There's different sciences you could adopt without taking too much of your space to grow food in your country or in your community. And then as well, another aspect I would also want to talk about on this is the fact that here in Nigeria, we have serious challenge with insecurity. Insecurity is a major issue. Like from COVID, from 2020 last year till now, like our prices on food have skyrocketed by times 3 the price of what it was before. And that's because people are unable to go to their farmlands. They are being, disturbed by the Fulani herdsmen, the herders clashes. And so one aspect, I went to a farm in Yangoji Kwali, somewhere in Abuja here, and I saw a science being done on agroecology, how you could, interrelate with your cattle for farming, you could interrelate with crops. So I think there are sciences we can adopt, but if the information is not out there, people would not know any of this. So it is our responsibility as advocates, to seek out this information, these new ideas, these new sciences, and also cascade to members of our community. That's what I would say for now.
To touch up on that topic, I would say that one idea I have on changing the food system would be to increase the number of affordable markets, including those farmers markets in those communities that suffer from food insecurity, and not just having them all around, because the transportation is what really causes people not to have the healthy food access. I believe we can increase the number of markets by getting a fund from the government, since this is an idea that benefits the people, or even come together with different organized nonprofit organizations that benefit the people, especially those who want to see healthy food play a part in people's lives.
Okay, that's fine. Fisayo.
Hello, Austin.
On this.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Right. Okay. Yeah. I think for me, I think it's very important that the state enables a very agro-friendly environment, policy-wise, as well as the giving of grants. Young people who want to go into agriculture, food, security issues, and work, but the enabling society is not there. So a couple of, was it last year? I know of someone who had come into the country with their fiance to start an agric business. It was a big farm somewhere in the southwest of the country. And they had started the farming, everything was going on well. They had production that was taking care of that, the market down south. And then because of insecurity, as Faith had mentioned, the particular group of people killed one of those young persons who had the farm. That stopped the farming because, I mean, you wouldn't want to lose your life for going into farming. So the issue of security also needs to be taken into cognizance. I also say it's very important to catch them young. So we have schools. There used to be a time while in school, in college, you do farming as a young person in school. It was compulsory. The school farm was used for that. But now I'm not really sure that happens in school. I mean, if you catch them young, inculcate there's duty as a young person to want to also contribute your quota to food security. I think that would go a long way. And when we look at the UN Charter, talks about cooperation between states. So that's where it's very important for us as countries, nations, whether the global south or the global north, wherever, we need to exchange best practices on farming, best practices on ensuring food security, and also international cooperation and assistance to one another. I think that might go a long way in helping and ensuring food security. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Jakira, over to you now.
It was really good. It sounds great, guys. The question I want to pose to you all, I know some of you spoke briefly on the impacts of COVID-19 on your communities and your country, but would you mind giving a more in-depth just details about what happened with the pandemic and how it affected your neighborhood, region, or in your country in general? And then maybe some tips on how you think you can better the economy or better the environment following such pandemic.
Okay, so I can jump in. So the COVID-19 pandemic impacted my community in many ways. To begin, a lot of people lost their jobs. This played a role in two ways. People were unemployed, so they no longer could afford healthy foods. And also many food companies lost employees, such as like truck drivers, which slowed down the food system. In addition to food shortages, the prices of foods were inflated. So a lot of people could not afford those foods, which really played a part into people's access to food. Some initiatives that Baltimore took to improve the access to food during the pandemic are produce boxes, which provided families with fresh produce, SNAP benefits, which provided them with more financial support so that they could afford those groceries. Yeah.
That's great. Elise?
Yeah, I think in the United States, the COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed some extreme pitfalls in our food system, especially in employment. Like, for example, even right now, and lockdown is not occurring anymore. If you go, at least in my town, if you go to any like fast food restaurants or even just like family-owned restaurants, a lot of them have limited hours and are closed like hours earlier than they normally would be because of the lack of employees. And this is understandable because employees weren't getting paid enough to even pay rent in almost all cities in the world from jobs that are paying minimum wage like this. So why would they come back to work when the government is providing assistance because of the pandemic? And I like a lot of, especially a little bit older than our generation, I can hear them complaining about, not complaining, but sort of expressing that it's different in their community, that they always wanted to work. And like our younger generations, which is usually who work at restaurants and fast food restaurants, should want to work. But now we're seeing, big corporations like McDonald's is one, Chipotle is another fast food restaurant, and even Walmart have increased their pay to like $15 an hour, which is like significantly higher than what they were paying before. And even like including sign-on bonuses, offering some sort of compensation for paying for schooling, like secondary education. And it kind of just exposed that like these corporations have been placing sort of profits and production over social equity and health. that now they can be providing these resources and they weren't before. It kind of is a red flag that we could have been compensating our workers and not exploiting underpaid workers the way that we were. And it's also really evident in the farm working community as well, on the flip side, because they haven't had the opportunity to, a lot of them haven't had the opportunity to go on this unemployment assistance that we have available in the United States, because more than 50% of farm workers are undocumented. And on top of that, like, I watched a video recently where a woman and her coworkers were talking about how her boss said, just don't come to work if you're sick, in regards to like farm work. And they can't afford to do that because they don't get this compensation for not working. And they're, they have to make ends meet. So they're risking their lives to go to work. Meanwhile, other people are not going to work because they're not getting paid enough. So it's just this like whole issue of the that sort of exposed the exploitation of underpaid workers, which a lot of us already knew about, but this really just heightens how much our food system in the United States depends on this exploitation to even function. And I think one way we can sort of assess that, or like try to fix that, is increasing minimum wage for people, trying to get more benefits and rights for farm workers, especially because most of them have none. Maybe like 1 or 2 paid sick days, or honestly none at all if they're undocumented. Which there's a lot of factors that go into being able to pay people more, but I think it should be a priority, and hopefully the government is starting to realize that.
I agree. I think we need to start compensating people for the quality of work they do, especially if they can provide a living, because if your employee isn't going to a safe environment after work, how would they be able to perform efficiently at work, So I feel like you have to be able to pay them a livable wage. Faith? Faith, can you hear me? Okay. Autumn?
I could chime in. I believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted food systems by increasing the number of unemployment, how we had mentioned, decreasing a lot of social activities that bring the communities together, increasing the number of people who want to help the community, and also noticing that poverty and struggle is real in Baltimore. Many churches, organizations, small businesses, and even those people with strong connections have helped the communities come out of many have helped many people come out of hard situations. And to highlight this has happened in Baltimore, churches have done food banks where families can get free food, fruits, vegetables. Many organizations have provided free toiletries to those who struggle. And also they have those social activities where kids can interact while their parents are collecting many sanitary things.
Cool. And Vita?
So I think so recently Singapore entered till 2 weeks ago, we were in phase 2 heightened alert. So this meant a lot of food and beverages establishments were only available for takeaways. So we weren't allowed to dine in. And a lot of organizations and establishments said that their dine-in menu is a lot different from their takeaway menu. And because most of the restaurants deal with fresh produce and all, I've seen a lot of hawker centers throughout the past 2 weeks and food courts where where it was completely empty because there was no one willing to eat there or even take away from there. So I think that's definitely impacted a lot of families in which hawker centers have been in generations. So that's definitely impacted. And one of the another impact would be the imports that arrived in Singapore. So that's reduced. And there was a time period where people were in this frenzy where everyone would rush to stores to get food to make sure they don't run out. So I think that's one of the main problems. And I believe one way to fix it is that hosting more food drives, because we are available, we have non-perishable items in our houses. And if food banks could donate a couple of goods per month, like in a sort of a bag or a goodie bag, I feel that can help a lot of families. So yeah, that's my point.
Cool. Fasayo, I know you mentioned what was going on in Nigeria during the pandemic, but do you have anything else you want to add? If not, it's okay.
Oh yeah, I earlier mentioned that, but just a couple of things again. I'll say that there is the need for equitable distribution of state resources. So, for instance, during the lockdown, we had a lot of issues around sharing of palliatives. So, there were palliatives that were not equitably distributed. So, it was most times given on based on favoritism. It wasn't shared under the core of non-discrimination and ensuring that the most vulnerable people actually get these resources. So, I mean, that's a very terrible one. And right now we are grappling with issues around inflation. So people can't even get to buy food that they need because the prices have gone way up, over 100% higher. And then the national minimum wage is also being struggled with. So you can match the extremely low national minimum wage with the high rate of inflation. I mean, that's a problem in the country. It's an aftermath of the last year pandemic, and it keeps going on. And we can't really see a lot of concrete action from government to remedy some of this issue. While the issue of lack of social security is also there, I think that could have helped us push in some issues last year, but that's not there. We don't work. We are not a country based on social security principles, so that kind of poses a lot of challenges as well. During the COVID, I'll say that the sharing of the palliatives that earlier mentioned didn't keep in mind the dietary needs of people. So government just wanted to share food for the sharing of food's sake, not because they had the good of the people at heart, ensuring that things that are shared actually meet people's dietary needs, are appropriate and culturally appropriate for those people they're sharing it for. So, I mean, last year was a terrible time. A lot of insecurity, a lot of criminal acts went up because people had to steal food, people had to break into other people's shops just to loot things. I think as a country, we can do better in preparing for such situations. I mean, we don't hope pandemic happens, but I mean, life is full of unforeseen circumstances, and it's the duty of the government and other supporting organizations to ensure that we are able to address some of these core issues, such as the right to food, which is, it goes to the existence of the human person. It can take life. It can take someone's life if you're hungry, and people die of hunger, people die of malnutrition. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board as a nation and have better strategies, national strategy, to help our food systems.
I agree, and hopefully the government in Nigeria can come together and implement those protocols so that if, forbid another pandemic happen, there'll be better protocols put in place to make sure that the people of Nigeria are taken care of. Faith, can you hear me? Okay, if you can hear me, you can just go ahead and answer the question.
Okay, so for us, yes, Fisayo has said, the government really failed us. Yes, they did. I can say that, people died more from issues not related to COVID-19 during the pandemic because there was serious hunger. People couldn't go to the market. And yes, dietary needs were shortchanged because the palliatives didn't consider those aspects of, other dietary needs needed for growth. And though, because we have all those vegetables, perishable items, things that would help, a diet plan, those are things that are perishable. And with the lockdown, no transport system was effective, nothing was really working. And there was really an increase in gender-based violence because at that point, everybody is locked in the house, in your various apartments. And so people were locked in with their abusers. People were coupled with the hunger. So it's like triple jeopardy for the women and even for children. So they were seeing this violence happening. It's different when they were in school, but right now they are all locked in the house. They are seeing the brutality of the father. They are seeing the hunger going on. So it was really crazy. Death rate was more of, all this other aspect. I won't call it minor than the COVID-19 virus, as it were. And then also, I would also talk on other aspect that had to do with people's position. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll just stop. I'll stop on that for now then. But really, hold on. Sorry, Jakira. I listened to other speakers and it's amazing. Like I was thinking like, wow, these are systems their government in their countries have put in place for them. But for us here in Nigeria, I don't think we could even boast of a dollar that was shared, given to the citizens to cushion effect of this pandemic as it happened. But then, even as Fisayo said, there was, unequitable distribution of some of these palliatives brought in. The basic thing, what really helped the nation as at then was, efforts of civil society organizations and private organizations who came up, did their own food bank drives and what have you. But any other thing, it's like, the citizens are to their own peril, what will happen. But I'm glad to see Fisayo on this call too. So we are confident that better things will come out from Nigeria and better policies will be in place.
So this was great. I really think that the policies and ideas you all have to combat the effects of COVID-19 in your areas are really great. I hope you all can implement them and they'll create a change in your communities. As we begin to close, we would like to just hear a few encouraging words from our panelists. So what are some small and efficient ways young people can promote food sustainability and strengthen food systems locally and globally, in your opinion?
Okay, I can chime in. So in my opinion, some small and efficient ways some people can promote food sustainability are cooking, growing and harvesting a smart garden such as like herbs, recycling and volunteering at a local like community garden or school garden, just to help out in the community and provide some more food resources.
I think another thing that especially young people can do here is use our voices, especially because we have such a large influence in social media and on the internet and just in media in general. We need to use our platforms, especially to call out large corporations that are causing a lot of the harm, especially at least in the United States, that's occurring. For example, we have like huge chemical companies like Monsanto that are having these lawsuits against them because they are giving people cancer from using chemicals that they have produced. And people can't stop using them, especially in the South. This especially affects Black farmers because they can't keep up with these huge industrial farms because without using chemicals, because it reduces production for them if they try to switch to more organic processes. And another example is in Hawaii, in the island of Kauai. There's Dow DuPont is another chemical company that has just like created the most toxic environmental conditions in all of American agricultural history by using these test fields that are right next to schools, right next to hospitals, right next to businesses. And these chemicals have been linked to like childhood development issues, cancer, and everything in between. And the government is aware of it and they're not doing anything to stop it. So I think using our platforms, like for one, we have more access to this information on the internet. Companies can't hide things as easily now. And it's our responsibility to seek out that information and to share it with our peers and to share it with the rest of the world and hold these companies accountable because it can't be all on us, the consumers, to make this change. Even though we, technically have a say, I guess, because consumers, I guess, do control what products are available, but only to some extent. It shouldn't be on us to hold companies accountable to act ethically. They should be doing it themselves.
Autumn?
I agree with Elise. I believe that you should, reach out to your different connections, especially social media, because that's one of the biggest platforms that we have, especially Instagram, where you could just post about different things and educate, the people about, why you should eat healthy foods and take that route. Following into what I believe they should canvass around their communities or, educate those in the communities. Young people can help each other, eat safe and healthy food by being in charge of cooking classes where you can cook a healthy meal and learn how to maintain that healthy diet. For example, I participate in this project called the Granny Project, where basically they provide the food to you. It's healthy food, of course, and they just go along with a chef and you just learn how to cook your own food. And I think it's a really great experience and a fun experience also for the young people and even people of older age to, kind of get out there and experience it more.
I think that's really cool. And Vita?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Autumn's point about using social media platforms to advocate issues about food shortage and wastage as well, because a lot of the youths have like thousands of followers, and even posting like a couple of daily informations can really help. And I also believe that if like we can make an effort to learn more about how to cook our own meals, like not just instant noodles or something, but nutritious meals, I think that could really help me as well as a lot of other people.
I definitely agree. Faith?
Can you? Okay, yeah. So for me, what would be my suggestion? It's the fact that we all should grow something. It's not enough that we are at the consumption, side of the ladder. We could step up a bit. Grow your vegetable, grow your tomatoes, grow, just the tiniest of all kind of food you can, or crop you can. It will go a long way. And yes, we have social media, but Fisaya, I think we are still battling with Twitter. Twitter has been banned in Nigeria here because we have a strong voice on Twitter here in Nigeria, but then it won't stop us from doing the needful, still making our voice heard, even across every other social platform. And then what I would say too is the fact that, beyond food system is not just what we are consuming, it's how it's grown. So it's important, like what Elise said, she mentioned something of Monsanto, doing a project here in the country, and that rang a bell that has to, because I work on policies on genetically modified foods. And the fact that my country would easily want to pass in some of these items that are brought in for, because Africa now is like we are there, like a lab for them. But so it's our responsibility to advocate that the right foods, the right policies are in place, the right policies that is inclusive, policies that are people centered, because the right of the consumer should be should never be taken away from them. And that's why we should have the power of choice and the right to choose. And so, yes, young voices should, increase their voices, young minds should increase their voices on this aspect. And then don't forget, grow what you eat.
Yeah, I like to. Thanks, Faith. Thanks, Faith. I also like to tell young people that we need to use the approach, the human right based approach, to demand for accountability when it comes to food systems, food security. The issue of food is a fundamental human right. It's not charity from government. It's not a handout to us. So we need to use the human rights language to demand accountability and for government to fulfill its international human rights obligations. It's not charity, it's a right.
I think that was a great point to make. Well, first of all, thank you guys. This has been such a fruitful and informative discussion. Please join me in giving yourselves, but also your fellow panelists, a round of applause. I've enjoyed the topics and dialogue we've had today. I hope our guests and our viewers and audience members feel the same. Make sure you all check out the UN's Food System Summit, in September 2021, where the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will launch bold new actions to develop and deliver progress to all 17 SDGs. I want to thank my co-host Austin for this dialogue and helping me. It was great. This was a very thoughtful and I think meaningful experience. So I just want to again thank you all for joining me here today. Thank you, my panelists, the audience, and we want to extend our gratitude to you all for being here for such a monumentous occasion. And we hope that each and every one of you have gained insight on status of food systems around the world, and you will feel more inspired to do your part in creating a sustainable and effective food system in your community and your countries. Remember, you do not have to wait until tomorrow to make a difference. We each have ability to take small steps and have great impacts and be leaders of today. So again, thank you all for participating in this dialogue, and I look forward to seeing all that you all accomplish. You all seem like you're very much great advocates in your community, and I just look forward to everything that you continue to do. So thank you. Do you all have anything you want to say?
Thanks for having us.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.